But we use sanitized terms like substance use disorder instead of addiction. It has no emotion on SNAP benefits. I mean, saying that more people are going to be food insecure isn't going to pressure the administration to do the right thing. But seniors going hungry and children going hungry, I mean, that again has the real emotion, the reality.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. We got a doubleheader today. In segment 2, it is Terry Moran has been reporting live from Chicago. But first, he needs a pretty short introduction. He's the governor of Kentucky. It's Andy Beshear. How you doing, Governor? I'm
good. Thanks for having me on.
I hear one of my buddies was made an honorary Kentucky colonel. I hear that you do that down there. So I don't know what the nomination process is like, et cetera, but I just wanted to mention that at the top, that I'm interested.
It is a tough process where we only make a couple hundred colonels a month. It's a process that helps spread Kentucky around the country and around the world. We try to recognize great service in all types of areas.
Feels like you can sneak me in then. I'm coming to a gay wedding in Kentucky next year. Maybe I can do a double dip, become a colonel and head to a wedding, or we'll talk about it. I want to talk a lot about kind of big picture Democratic stuff. I did some tweeting about you that prompted this here podcast. But first, just a little bit on the news. Obviously, the government shutdown is continuing. The loss of SNAP funds has started for a couple of days now. It's pretty acute in red states. I know that you guys are trying to figure out ways to patch that. What exactly is the impact of this shutdown in Kentucky and particularly the SNAP issue?
It's significant. First, we've got between 20 and 30,000 federal employees, many of which are going without a paycheck. At a time when things cost too much, at a time when far too many people live paycheck to paycheck, not getting one at all is just brutal. And so we're thinking about each and every one of those families. Then there is the president's decision originally not to fund SNAP at all and now to only partially fund it. I want to be clear that this is entirely on the president. This is the first shutdown that SNAP hasn't been funded. And a president who has never really cared about what he can and can't do under the law took the position that his lawyers told him that he could not fund SNAP. So I sued him along with a number of other governors and AGs, and we got a very clear ruling that said he could either fund it in full or in part. And now they have chosen to only fund it in part. So we've got 600,000 Kentuckians that rely on SNAP to help them to have enough to eat. It should be a no-brainer to fully fund it. A president should never make a decision where people don't have enough to eat, especially in a country that grows enough food for everyone. You know, my faith and values are driven by, the miracle of the fishes and the loaves, which is so important. It's in every book of the gospel. And it should teach us to always make sure our neighbor has enough food. So in Kentucky, we're stepping up and doing what we can. You know, no state's going to be able to make up for, in Kentucky, it'd be at least $50 million a month that the federal government is not covering. But as a start, we have provided $5 million in emergency funding to our food banks, who are working to get it out all over the Commonwealth. And then we're asking neighbors to help their neighbors, to donate. And if the federal government won't do the right thing, the people of the United States should do the right thing.
Yeah. So, in addition, obviously, the most important thing are people that are potentially going hungry and losing access to food that they've been relying on. In addition to that, obviously, like farmers, contribute this food to SNAP. This is part of a broader, trend of Trump administration policies that are hurting ag country between the trade wars, et cetera. Can you talk about what you're seeing on the ground in the more rural part of the states and how this administration's policy has been affecting the economy there?
Yeah, farmers are getting hammered. The Trump administration may be the worst presidential administration towards farmers that I've seen in my lifetime. You look at his trade war and how it has pushed China to purchase soybeans from Brazil and Argentina. Kentucky farmers grow soybeans and corn in that rotation, as do farmers throughout most of the Midwest. Losing this giant market on top of U.S. aid, which was another big client of farmers, on top of the cuts to the farm to cafeteria program, is hitting farmers every which way. And then the Trump administration decides they're going to do a huge multi-billion-dollar bailout of Argentina, which is now providing those soybeans to China, taking away that market from us. And now cattle farmers are getting hit because the Trump administration is talking about purchasing beef from Argentina, that same place we are bailing out, that same place that's taking our soybean market. And let me tell you, our cattle farmers are fired up.
Do you think it's breaking through in the rules? In addition to the ag and the farm stuff, there's also the healthcare, issue and the cuts to healthcare that we're seeing from the administration. A listener sent me a screenshot from like the next door, so like the neighborhood conversations, in her community, and there are a lot of people that are like blaming the Democrats for the increase in healthcare. I guess Obamacare must be Democrat, et cetera. I do think this is kind of a challenge for Democrats to message, particularly in this information environment, to people, in rural communities and more red communities about like why this is happening, why they're losing access to healthcare, why their Obamacare is going up, why their SNAP is going away. Like, do you have any thoughts on how to communicate that?
Well, I think it is starting to break through, and it will continue to break through. One of the challenges in rural America is the National Democratic Party for decades didn't invest. And the Republican National Party demonized Democrats throughout those decades with significant investments. And thus, sometimes it became a part of people's identity, their party, or at least the party they didn't want to be a part of. And that doesn't change overnight. But what you do see are people knowing where these policies come from, or most people knowing them. And that's in part, and I want to give him credit for this, Donald Trump owns his terrible policies more than any other president that I've ever seen. I mean, he held that big tariff board. Yeah. And so anybody that's impacted by tariffs, they know that this is Donald Trump's policy, and the fact that it changes so much, that it's so chaotic, has his fingerprints all over it. We've gone from across the board to reciprocal, to industry specific, to company specific, to product specific tariffs. We've now seen tariffs because he doesn't like a commercial during the World Series or the baseball playoffs. We've seen tariffs against Brazil over a prosecution, and not on non-economic grounds. It's making coffee prices go up, which impacts most Americans. Yeah. I even know of a small business in Western Kentucky, and they were booming, but they get their raw materials from China, and then they assemble their product in the United States. We get the better part of that deal because those assembly jobs pay good wages to the people of Western Kentucky in this instance. But because of their products, the price going up because of tariffs, they've had to start laying people off. And when a small business starts laying people off, it's people they go to church with. It's people who their kids play on a soccer team with. And let me tell you, at least one of these owners is telling every single employee that he lays off exactly who caused it, and that's Donald Trump.
So let's go back to your assessment of kind of why the Democrats have lost ground in more rural and red parts of America. And I think it's definitely true that the lack of investment is there, and that Republicans have done so. And there's a media environment that demonizes Democrats, that a lot of folks are ensconced in, for sure. I think also, though, like, it's just a reality. Like, the Democrats have gone left on cultural issues. I think over the decades, when I was coming up, back when I was a Republican, there are a lot of Democrats who had far more conservative views on a variety of issues, be it immigration, abortion, gay marriage, whatever it may be. And there's less of that now. And I wonder if how much of that you attribute to the Democrats' loss of ground, like that they maybe have gotten out of step with more culturally conservative America on some of those social issues.
I'm not sure that it's a particular view on an issue as much as how much time that the people of America think we spend on any one issue. So I'm governor of a state that went to Trump plus 30 in the last election. I've got about a 64% approval rating, and I vetoed every anti-LGBTQ bill that's come across my desk. I vetoed anti-choice bills that have come across my desk. And I think the reason that I still win is while some people may disagree with me on those issues, they know I spend 80% of my time focused on things that impact 100% of the people of Kentucky. That's their jobs and whether they can afford the things they need. It's their next doctor's appointment for themselves, their parents, or their kids. So roads and bridges they drive, the school they drop their kids off at, and whether they feel safe in their community. So I may on one day veto a bill that somebody supports, but if the next day I'm opening a new factory that pays great wages, that's going to change people's life in that community, I think this last presidential election has shown that that's where people are. That's what they care about the most, that they may have very strong convictions on different things, but if they're struggling to pay their child's next prescription, they're looking for a candidate that lives right there, that gets real results and that betters their lives. So I think that Democrats, we just need to spend more of our time on what are really nonpartisan issues that better people's lives and show we are the party that gets results. Now, the other thing I think we need to do is speak like normal human beings. I mean, to talk to people and not to talk at them and to never talk down to them. And we shouldn't be judging voters that are out there because we need them to come back and vote for Democratic candidates. But we use sanitized terms like substance use disorder instead of addiction. You take something that's mean and nasty with the word addiction that we all feel, and we use something so sanitized, it has no emotion on SNAP benefits. I mean, saying that more people are going to be food insecure isn't going to pressure the administration to do the right thing. But seniors going hungry and children going hungry, I mean, that again has the real emotion, the reality that can hopefully push people to do the right thing.
All right, y'all. Today's sponsor is Naked Wines. You know, I when I was living in the Bay Area, everybody around me was a pretend wine expert, and as was my contrarian nature, I tried to cut the other way and learn as little as possible about the wines. As you know, the tech bros with their RSUs who had wine cellars in their basements, but that left me in this place where these days we're want to have a little house party. You want to go to somebody else's house who's having a house party. You want to bring a wine. It's hard to know what to bring. You go into the store. You don't know what to get. Well, if you're like me, our sponsor has a solution for you. It's Naked Wines. Naked Wines is a wine club that directly connects you to the world's best independent winemakers so you can get world-class wine delivered straight to your door. Use our code, THEBULWARK, for the code and password at nakedwines.com and get $100 off your first order. That's 6 bottles for just $39.99. I've been down there. Sarah Longwell's been doing this. She's doing better than me as an ad sponsor because I don't know when she starts drinking the Naked Wines in her office. Okay, I'm living in New Orleans. She's in DC. I'm not monitoring her. I'm not a hall monitor, but I do notice that the wine bottle is easily accessible next to her camera and next to her desk when she's doing the Naked Wines ads reads. Mine are downstairs in the kitchen. But I've enjoyed trying out the different varietals, having it come right to our door, and being prepared no matter the occasion. So Naked Wines has been around for over 15 years and backs over 90 independent winemakers around the world to make the wine you love and drink. Now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Head to nakedwines.com/thebulwark. Click enter voucher and put in my code, THEBULWARK, for both the code and password for $100 off your first order. That's 6 bottles for only $39.99 with shipping included. That's $100 off your first 6 bottles at nakedwines.com/thebulwark and use the code and password THEBULWARK for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99. So I agree with all of that, but I like to, so that makes me nervous because when you're saying stuff that is exactly what I agree with, I start to think, well, there must be something else to the story here because I don't think.
Maybe we're just in the right lane.
Yeah, well, maybe that could be right, but I look at you, and I feel like there's got to be something else there. Like that's a nice story, but Heidi Heitkamp I had on the pod last week. She lost to North Dakota. She talked like a normal person. I don't think anybody thought she was really focused on far left cultural issues. Brandon Presley lost in Mississippi a couple years ago. I don't think anybody thought he was some lib culture warrior. We could go down the list of Democrats who have lost in these states who kind of took your advice. What else could it be? Is there another element to this that you think Democrats need to think about?
Well, I think a third piece is Democrats are really focused on the what. We get obsessed with our policies, with policy point 3, sub point 2, bullet point 4. We get way down in the weeds on the what, but we never talk about the why. And what people want to know a lot of times is what drives you. What makes you authentically want to do this job and to be able to feel like they know enough about you to where they know why you make certain decisions. So when I vetoed the nastiest anti-LGBTQ plus bill our state had ever seen in the middle of my reelection, I talked about my why. And for me, that's my faith. It teaches me that all children are children of God, and I didn't want people picking on those kids. The legislature is going to show them hate. I wanted to show them love. If the legislature was going to show them judgment, I wanted to show them acceptance. And I talked about it in those terms because that's how I feel about it. The other side then ran $10 million of the most awful, terrible ads. I ran $9 million of look at all the great jobs that we're creating ads. And I won by 4.5 more points than I was elected by 4 years before. And so I do think that there is a path, but it's respecting voters enough to talk about not just the what, but the why. Now, admittedly, getting results is also really helpful. Since I've been governor, we've created the most jobs. We've had the most private sector investment. We've broken our exports record. We've broken our tourism record 3 straight years. Drug overdose deaths are down. And so what Democrats do when we win is we govern well, and you see that across Democratic governors. And that's why I think you see Democratic governors winning and winning re-election. And I think that's really important, that it can't just be about the election. It can't just be about the policies, but you actually have to make people's life better when you get the opportunity.
On the why, you went straight to faith, and it's kind of awkward to bring up, but I do think that there is an impression that the Democratic Party has become at least somewhat hostile to Christianity, fair or unfair. I was interviewing a Hispanic influencer guy who said basically, he thinks part of the reason why Democrats lost ground with Hispanics is that if you go back in the past, whether it be Joe Biden or past Democratic candidates, there's a sense that they were Christian, they believed in God, and that is lost a little bit. Do you sense that? Do you think about that at all? Do you intentionally talk about your faith, going to church, all that?
Well, I talk about my faith because it's part of me. It's part of what drives me, and I think our candidates need to be authentic about what drives them. Josh Shapiro talks about his faith, which is different from mine, but it still teaches those same value sets, and people will respect faith even if it's different from theirs. People could talk about how they were raised doing right and not doing wrong, as long as it's real to them. But for the longest time, Democrats were scared to talk about their why. Now I think we absolutely have to do it. Democrats can't sound like sanitized robots. People demand authenticity in a world of social media where you can see people in very different ways. Things like this, they expect you to answer tougher questions, and then they just want to feel like they know you a little bit. I tell you what, maybe one of the main reasons I won re-election in Kentucky by so much compared to before is people in Kentucky don't call me governor. They call me Andy. And part of that is because, especially during the pandemic, I had a daily update for 1.5 years without missing a single day. But it created a relationship where if you're doing that every day, they're going to see exactly who you are. You're not going to be able to hide one piece of who you are. But even when I'd make a mistake, the fact that it was upfront and real and authentic, people can forgive that as long as they see who you are and that you're trying.
You got teenage kids, right?
I do.
Yeah, you making them go to church with you on Sunday? They sitting there?
We all go to church. Sometimes they'll go to youth group, and that's been a neat part of them. That doesn't mean they like to get up to go to church.
I was like, good. It's like, good on them. I'm not close your ears, Mom. I used to, as soon as I got my driver's license, I pretended to go to church on Sunday and went and got donuts and read the newspaper like a dork.
Now,
so you might want to keep an eye on them.
Now,
if they say they're going to the late service, you don't know what they're actually doing.
Thankfully, with YouTube and the rest, there are lots of options to see your church service.
That's true. One more thing on this, on the social issues. Do you think there's any issues that you feel like your party has gone too far left on, or that you feel like that they're out of step with you on them? Or do you really think it's just all about framing?
Well, no, I think we need room in the Democratic Party for people to have different views. I think we've got to get away from the litmus tests. The idea of a healthy democracy means even within a party, everyone doesn't have to fully agree, and elections are math. You need more people voting for you than the other person. Yeah. And therefore, the more litmus tests you have, the more purity tests you have, the fewer people that you welcome into your party. Also, we claim to be a party of inclusivity, and those litmus tests are exclusive. Now, we've got to support people when they stand up for their convictions, and people can have different convictions, but we shouldn't just be the party of this issue or that issue. We should be the party of the American dream. I mean, right now, over half of Americans believe the American dream is out of their reach, and that's really dangerous for this country. The idea that if you work hard and play by the rules, that you can get ahead, if suddenly people don't believe in that, then our country hurts and doesn't move forward with the momentum that we need. And so we've got to be the party of creating better jobs, of bringing down costs, of affordable health care, of making sure that people can buy their first home when they're about the same age that their parents could. I think it's the right place to be. And I also think it could help bridge this divide of us versus them, because, listen, somebody may have voted Republican their entire life, but if they can't afford that first home, and your policies make it possible for it, that they bring that American dream back in line, they're gonna think a little bit differently in that next election.
You talked about the results you delivered in Kentucky. There is one of the other kind of debates that's going out there when Democrats look at like how things went wrong for them and how they've allowed themselves to lose power. Is a critique being posed by Ezra Klein and some others around this question of abundance, right? That like the Democrats have not actually delivered the government services that they promised because of rules and regulations. I was listening to an interview you were doing a couple months ago where you were talking about how hard it was to get that rural broadband down in Kentucky. What do you make of that conversation around abundance and regulation and red tape? It's to some people, I think, in the Democratic Party, it codes a little bit Republican-y. It's like it sounds a lot like what Ronald Reagan was talking about, so it makes them uncomfortable. What do you make of it?
I'm less worried about any coding than I am about getting real results for the American people. If Democrats believe that internet access is critical for the future and that we ought to have policies that allow everyone to be able to afford it, then we actually have to follow through and get the results. And if we create so many hoops that you have to jump through and so much pre-planning that 3 years later there's not 1 inch of fiber in the ground, we've got to recognize we're doing something wrong. That's not, again, anything.
And that's crazy, though. That is a catastrophe. Like 3 years later, It's one thing to be like, oh, this was a mistake and we didn't do it. It's there should have been hair on fire over this.
And let me just say, I believe that the Democratic Party can be pro-worker and pro-business. And here's why I describe myself as being pro-business. I recruit the next big business to come to Kentucky. I'm going to tell them that we're going to follow every rule, but we're going to get them up and running 6 months faster than they would in any other state. Why is that important to me? Because the faster they're up and running, the faster they hire Kentucky families. The faster someone has a better wage, the faster someone has that health insurance that's provided by that company. So as Democrats, we're supposed to believe in that end result that makes people's lives better. So we ought to be reflective about what we're doing from the passage of a bill or the decision to pursue a policy and what it takes to get there. So as we look forward to hopefully flipping the House, flipping the presidency in 2028, rebuilding the federal government, we ought to do it in a way that's really effective. Because if we can deliver for the American people at a real level without any of the cruelty of the current administration, without any of the chaos, then I think we could have really good governance. We could heal the country, and we could have a lot of Democrats doing really good things for a long time.
So once again, I'm just going to challenge you because I agree with all that. You're speaking to me a little too much. It reminds me of when I went to work for John Huntsman in 2012, and I was like, I love this guy. He's making sense. And then we finished in last place running for president. So, sometimes my instincts are a little out of touch with what the electorate is. A lot of other Democrats will listen to that and say, I think that, no, the real answer is there needs to be just more of a populist left focus, like centering of the workers, where sure, bringing business into Kentucky is all fine and good, but you need to understand who the real foes are here. It's the billionaire class, it's the elites, and the Democrats need to, be once again the vanguard of the working man. It would be kind of the Bernie Sanders argument that he made in the New York Times this week. What would you say to that?
Well, I think the approach can and should be a lot simpler than that. That a lot of that speak where we're talking about center left or center right, it falls into that idea of the coalition that I think hurt Democrats the last time. I think Democrats in some of the campaigns were saying, well, we have to have 76% of this group and 86% of that group and 65% of this group. And they were sending different messages to all of them. And to give the Trump campaign credit, they said, let's do 3% better with everyone. And what did it show us? That yes, there are important issues to important groups, but everyone wants to be able to afford not only the groceries for their family, but to be able to take them on vacation from time to time. And so I think we've just got to be the party that is saying, we see you, we hear you, we know that you are struggling. We know the American dream feels out of reach, and we are going to work harder every single day to make it a reality again, to make your life a little bit better and a little bit easier. I think that's the lane for us. I think that's the lane that Trump won in. And I think that his policies now, making it so much more difficult, are eventually going to lead to a feeling of betrayal. But again, that lane that he won on and that we used to win on is right there.
I think Kamala would tell you she did that. It's like, what do you think? Where do you think things went wrong?
I believe that President Trump was able to depict the vice president as distracted, as focused on a bunch of issues that didn't necessarily impact people's daily life. And a lot of us, we see all the rallies, we read a bunch of it, but those weren't what his ads were in those swing states. Those weren't what his digital messages were. What were they? Things cost too much. I'm going to work to bring them down. I'm going to work harder on it.
But also, I mean, a ton of negative ads about how she supported health care for transgender immigrant prisoners.
So in that last ad, I think it ended up being more about distraction than anti-trans. I think if a voter was anti-trans, they were already voting for Donald Trump. But I think what he did in that ad was to say, I'm going to focus on the economy.
I think that there are a lot of black voters that aren't really, just for one example, you look at the interview she did on Charlemagne the God show. Charlemagne talked about this, about there are a lot of his listeners who had been Democrats, but also have various conservative values or whatever, various views that made them not be supportive of trans girl playing in girls' sports. And so I think that there are maybe traditional Democrats that aren't anti-trans, like bigoted, but were on the Republican side of that debate.
But I think it depends on how much they think you're going to focus on what. All of us have slightly different views. We're raised in different ways. We have different life experiences. So you're almost never going to have a candidate that has 100% of the same views that you do. And if you think that, you're probably not looking closely enough. But I think what voters are saying right now are, what are the things that you're going to spend 80% of your time on? And that's why I think the formula is 80% of our time on things that matter to 100% of the American people. That 20%, people can be okay with differences in if their next paycheck's going to be a little bit better, if they believe you're trying to bring down the price of pharmaceuticals, if you've built that new road that saves them 20 minutes each way, and they've got 40 more minutes with their family.
I'm with you on all that. I'm just trying to figure out what it looks like. I'm sorry to belabor the point, because I think that if you ask Joe Biden's team and Kamala Harris's team, they would say they tried to take your advice, right? I don't think that they were really focused on trans sports or climate or identity issues, particularly. The vice president went out of her way, I think, to not talk about identity issues, in my view. So it feels like there's something else there. And I wonder if you had a time machine and were able to go back to 2020 and sit down with Joe Biden in the Oval Office and say, I'm from the future. Doc Brown gave me this DeLorean, and I'm telling you that we're going to lose next time based on the current plans. Like, what would you have told them to do to get it on a different trajectory? Was there anything that they could have done to get us on a different trajectory?
Yeah, I would have done a couple of things. First, I would have told him fewer regulations, fewer rules, get the dollars for Internet for All and for other programs out there, and then carefully watch and audit all of us and make sure that we follow the rules, but actually have all of that work happening. They were under the belief that once a law passed that the next administration wouldn't be able to pull it back. And I'd seen that in Kentucky. I was Attorney General under a Republican governor that, at a time of a budget surplus, refused to send all the dollars appropriated to our universities. And I had to sue to make it happen. And so I'd seen this happen before. I would say if you want 8 years to be able to put these programs in, they've got to really be humming in the first 4. And then I'd say you also got to get out and show people what you're doing. People need to see and feel and touch the progress that's out there. When I was going into re-election in 2023, 2021 had been our best year for economic development ever by far. 2022 had been our second best year by far. And I was running against an opponent that had spent 1 year in the private sector. And ironically, he'd worked for my law firm. Little awkward. But when we originally polled, who's better for the economy because of the Democrat-Republican thing, I was only winning by about 4 or 5 points. And I just couldn't believe it with all this work. But what we saw in focus groups, which can be effective just to get your mind where people's minds are if you're really listening, was that people just need to be reminded. They're not living in the everyday that you are. And so we said, what about the $5.8 billion battery plants? And they said, oh, yeah, I heard about all those jobs. If you talk to them about new jobs in their community, which we did, we put them on our mailers specifically in their county that they drove by every single day. If you send out a postcard to everyone who lives within 10 miles of a new important road project, I would say get out there and just make sure that people know that reason that your life is a little bit better is because of this administration. And I'll tell you, I was at a lot of groundbreakings for them. And you know who was standing there with me? The Republican congressman that voted against it.
Yeah, that's true. I want to get back to the Republicans, but and the last thing on this, it's awkward, but I just think, was the problem that Joe Biden wasn't capable of going out there and didn't, just because of his age, didn't have the vigor, the communication skills anymore to do it, and that the Democrats should have just dealt with that reality earlier?
So I think certainly the pandemic played a role in the first part. I think a focus on foreign policy when people were crying out domestically, impacted it too, and they admitted that. On the health side, as a governor, I see the president twice a year. And so it's hard for me to know exactly
that feels bad,
where
though.
Things work.
I mean, again, I could I don't think that there are any Republicans out there, governors out there who are saying I don't ever hear from Donald Trump. Like, my understanding is that he's pretty visible.
I will say he is visible, but the way he's visible is very different. Like,
sure.
Donald Trump gets out there and goes to sports, and just being seen, we can see, is helpful. What we don't see him doing is traveling to states on the economy or on health care, on major policy pieces. And I think that's going to come back and hit him later on.
So you don't think that the age thing was the problem last time?
I think age played a role. There's no question that age played a role. There's even nuanced questions that you can ask about energy to run in the toughest election in the world.
Yeah. What back to Trump and him getting out there. I guess it was on Jon Stewart's, listened to one of the other interviews where you were saying that, obviously you grade Trump's performance pretty low, but you should compliment administrations when they do things well. I think you acknowledged FEMA at that time, this was a couple months ago, was doing well at that time. Here we are, like 10 months in. Like, what would you say are the things that the administration has done that's the most damaging? Maybe it's what we've already discussed. And are there anything that you think that they've done that you think you approve of?
Well, the big ugly bill is going to be the most devastating of their policies. And that's saying something, because tariffs are really awful and are slowing the economy and are causing job losses and may well cause a recession, will at least prevent what was going to be really significant growth. But the big ugly bill, it's going to take $1 trillion out of primarily rural health care. It's going to close rural hospitals. Kentucky may lose 20,000 healthcare workers. Remember, that's one of the fastest growing parts of rural economies. The largest payroll in a lot of these communities is going to close, and that means the restaurant, the coffee shop, and the bank all may close too. You're going to see property values decrease, which is going to impact schools. And then worker productivity is going to go way down because you got to take a full day off just to see a doctor. Then you got to take your kids, and then you got to take your parents. And so this is going to hit rural America like a sledgehammer. On the positive side, the FEMA response, certainly to February flooding in Kentucky, was some of the best I'd seen. I also think we've got to give him some credit for getting hostages back recently. I wish that could have been done faster, but listen, a lot of people got to come home to their families. Yeah.
I want to talk about the governor's races out there really quick. You're the head of the Governors Association, and then we'll do some fun stuff, and I'll let you get out of here. How do we get more Andy Beshears? How do the Democrats get more Andy Beshears out there? I'm looking at the races in 2026 in red states. You got Kansas and Iowa jumped out at me. Are you seeing other candidates that are doing things you like in particular?
I am, and I'm the head of the Democratic Governors Association in 2026, and our goal is to change the map, is to win in places that people don't expect. And part of that is having really good candidates. You look at Iowa, and Rob Sand has gotten elected statewide as auditor a bunch of times. I've been with him. I've heard him. What a great candidate. And I think he's going to have a really good
we did a great interview with him over on the YouTube. I'll put it in the show notes for people who want to learn more about him. He was good.
And so I think that's an example. Now, another example is having a good candidate, and then the other side puts up an extremist.
Yeah.
You saw that when John Bel Edwards, and he became governor of Louisiana, just as hard to run in Kentucky before I won. Now, I remember the call when he was running, when he described how he was going to win, and he was right, that his opponent was going to be too extreme and that he was going to focus on people's everyday lives. And so that's what we'll be looking for.
So John Bel Edwards was pro-life, though. He took some cultural views to the right. Back to that conversation from earlier. It's worth noting.
But look at where he was on climate change. For instance, and so you think we can put all these in one bucket or another.
I'd love to have John Bel Edwards right now, man. We got the worst governor in America down here, Jeff Landry. He's fucking up the football coach search. In addition to everybody's sales taxes are going up, there are no jobs. He's doing nothing right.
Well, John Bel is a good friend of mine, great governor, good example of how you can govern in states where the governor may be one party and the legislature another. So I still call John. And by the way, when Kentucky got hit really hard by the worst tornado disaster in our life and the worst flooding disaster, John Bel and y'all in Louisiana gave us your travel trailers that you had kept in good condition. After the tornadoes, we had them up in a month. After the flooding, we had them up in 6 days, and we owe a big thank you there.
What about the model of having one of my people run? We got Never Trumper Jeff Duncan is in a primary in Georgia. Obviously, there are other candidates. Keisha Lance Bottoms, a former mayor of Atlanta, others. So I know you probably can't pick a horse in a primary, but just in general, what do you think about the Jeff Duncan model in some of these states?
Yeah, I can't pick a horse in a primary. We got a lot of great candidates in Georgia, and I was all for him getting in, which some may disagree with. But listen, he was at the time a Republican willing to speak out against Trump, willing to give up his office because of it, and there's a lot to respect there.
All right, let's do some fun candidates questions at the end. They might not all be fun for you. They're fun for me, though. One area I like Andy Beshear. One area where maybe our MO is a little different is I got a lot of people I hate. I do a lot of 2-minute hate on here, which is maybe against Christian values. I'm working on that. But is there anybody, if you just look at the news right now, is there anybody out there that really is boiling your blood, that you really detest?
I won't use the word hate, but
I appreciate
JD Vance made his money initially off of criticizing my people in Kentucky. Hillbilly Elegy blames our challenges on us, claims we are lazy, and that is not who we are. I think he is incredibly condescending, and I believe that he is fraying our alliances with Europe that are critical to world stability, supporting far-right groups, and talking down to world leaders that we should want strong relationships with.
Great pick. That was my pick too. I was hoping you'd pick JD Vance. Stephen Miller's a close second, but JD is, there's a special category for him because of the smarminess. To that point, I think a lot of Democrats really want a lot more fight right now. And, I think a lot of Democrats obviously like Tim Walz, thought he did a good job as governor. We're happy he was picked as VP. In his debate performance with JD, though, like the debate was kind of collegial in a way that rubbed some people the wrong way. I was wondering what you made of that. How do you think Tim Walz did in that debate? And what do you think the Democrats' job is when it comes to actually confronting the other side?
Tim is a good friend, and he was upfront with the vice president that debating was not his strong suit, that it made him uncomfortable. I got a legal background. I get excited about debates, and I take it right to my opponent. My opponent in my reelection would not, on the record, say whether he was for exceptions for rape and incest in our total abortion ban in Kentucky. And I will tell you, during those debates, I looked at him and I asked him in one debate 6 times to go on the record for it. And you could see how extreme that he was, and also unwilling to just look at the camera and answer a question. Why
weren't you on the short list for VP, do you think?
Well, I don't know how far I got. I don't know if I was in the Elite Eight or the
You haven't asked her? You haven't called her and asked her? She's telling all the old stories now on her book tour.
Now, listen, I don't think that I was the right fit for her, and I don't think that she thought I was the right fit for her, and I'm okay with that. So my thing was, if I was in that final game, I had 2 questions before I was willing to do it. Number one, what's the job? Being a governor is great. You got a really good job every day where you can get real results, and things are going so well in Kentucky. And the second one would have been, how in this role can I deliver for Kentucky? Because I made the promise to serve out, my entire 4 years of my second term. And I never got to ask those questions, but that's what I still had on my mind and on my heart.
All right. The most important part of Kentucky is the bourbon. I'm a bourbon man myself. I'd like a bourbon ranking from you, a top 3. Do you have a top 3? I don't want you to get in trouble with any of those bourbon makers, but there's hard choices in politics.
My favorite kids, and when I look at Will and Lila, I tell them my favorite child is Winnie the dog because she doesn't talk back. I like a lot of them. I think Michter's is really good. I love that the owner moved to Kentucky and is growing that business. I like Eagle Rare from Sazerac. That's also a really good one. I like a lot of the products that come out of Brown Foreman. I like some of the Woodford Reserves. The Double Oak, I think, is really good. The Triple Oak may be a little too sweet for me, but I really like the Double.
That's pretty good. I'm a Blanton's man, but those are all good choices. Michter's is good. The only good thing that came out of the LSU season this year is I won a bet with a listener on the Clemson game over Blanton, and he sent me a bottle of Blanton's. So shout out to him. People say you can be a little, look at you. You've been mentioning your church going. Have you ever gotten any trouble? Had one too many bourbons? Gotten any loose?
Well, I think when we're growing up, we all cut a little loose every now and then, but we all try to learn from that, and being imperfect human beings, get better each and every day.
All right. That's good enough. Governor Beshear, I appreciate it. Next time we get together, how about over a bourbon? Maybe in Kentucky when you make me a Kentucky colonel, is it like a British thing where I kneel down and you put a sword on my shoulder, or how does that work?
We can do that if necessary.
Okay. Maybe we'll do that over a bourbon next time I'm in town, or holler at me if you get down to Louisiana. All right.
All right. Thank you for having me.